Good afternoon, and welcome to the St. Mary's County Government 457B Governance Committee. Today is Thursday, November 18th, and we're getting started at 3 p.m. We're here in the Chesapeake Building on Baldridge Street in Leonardtown. We do have some of our members joining us via Zoom, so we will do a roll call. I'm Rebecca Bridget, the County Administrator. Also present is Jeanette Cudmore, our Chief Financial Officer. Also present is Chris Castellini, Director of Economic Development. Joining us by Zoom is Chief Butler with the Sheriff's Office, and Zane Retsef as an employee member. We also have Catherine Pratson joining us. She's our Plan Administrator, and Tracy McPherson, our Plan Administrator. And thank you also, Amy, for our videography today of the meeting. I would like to make a note that Lieutenant Moses has resigned his position as an employee member, and so we will go through the process for another appointment of an employee member in the future. The commissioners will make appointments in December, and I've alerted Diane Gleisner, who manages our boards, committees, and commissions, that vacancy now exists. So with that, we will go into item number 2, roll call. A is approval of the November 18th meeting agenda. That's today. If you take a minute to look at that, and we'll take a motion to approve, please.
Alrighty, I'll move to approve the 457B Governance Committee meeting agenda for November 18th, 2021.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second to approve today's agenda. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. And the next item, 2B, is approval of the August 26th meeting minutes. If you take a minute to review, we'll entertain a motion to accept.
I will move to approve the minutes.
Thank you. The motion has been made to approve the minutes of August 26th. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. The motion's approved, motions and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you. And new business 3A is our VOIA presentation, and we will turn that over to you, Sarla, for your presentation. Thanks for joining us this afternoon.
Thank you. Let me share my screen real quickly. Okay, can you see my screen?
Yes.
Perfect. All right. Well, good afternoon, everyone, and I hope you're all doing well. I have prepared a presentation today for the period ending September 30th, and I'll walk you through the information. I'll point out some highlights, and then we'll wrap up with some new items that are available on the participant website and communications that we'll be implementing. So certainly at any time, if you have any questions, please feel free to ask me. There we go. And just as a reminder, this is our team that services the plan. And the most important person on this team is Marta, who meets with your employees. Okay, so here we'll start out by looking at the plan demographics and the financial data. And if you look at the far right-hand column, this is for the one-year period ending September 30th. We started the period off with almost 15 million in assets. Another 1.2 million was added through payroll deferrals. 97% of those deferrals are being made on a pre-tax basis. Employees have the option of saving on a pre-tax basis or utilizing the Roth option. And this has been pretty consistent. Majority of the deposits being saved via pre-tax. And if we look at distributions, they were significantly down, about 50% less than the prior one-year period, which is always good news. That means more assets are staying in the plan. And then other activity, just as a reminder, is the net of asset transfers, revenue credit, fees, and dividends. So that number was up compared to the prior one-year period, and that's mostly because of the dividends and asset transfers. And we had some very healthy market appreciation, which resulted in about $2 million being added to the plan. So we ended the period with about $18.4 million, which was about 23.5% more than the beginning of the period. And we'll look at some additional demographics. We added 25 new accounts over the past 1 year. And this is less than the previous one-year period, but I think a lot of that has to do with the environment that we're in. And I'll talk about some strategies that we have in place to really focus on new enrollments and get that trending in the right direction. We had 8 participants that closed out their accounts during this period as well, leaving a total of 349 participants. So when we talk about total participants in the plan, that is those individuals that are actively employed as well as individuals that have separated from service. However, they've made a decision to keep their money in the plan. So we have 77 of participants that have separated from service but yet chose to keep their money in the plan. And of that 77, 14 have a balance of less than $5,000. And if you look down at the bottom box, you'll see that the average account balance is higher than the previous one-year period, as well as the benchmark. And then the average referral amount is also trending. It's in the right direction. It's higher than the previous one-year period. So these are all good signs. And then the average number of investments is 1.6 compared to the benchmark of 2.8. But when you use the target date funds, you expect this number to be a little bit lower.
Sarla, may I jump in for a minute, please?
Absolutely.
If you could go back to the screen with the terminated employees with the account balance of less than 5. And please correct me if I'm wrong here, but I believe we have the option that we can legally force those people out of the plan if we want to. We have not done so yet. And the thinking behind it is that it's an expense to the plan to have those members. So just something for the board to consider. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And here, what you see is just a breakdown of the plan assets and contributions by category, and majority of the assets are still in the target date funds, 73.8%, as well as the contributions, 68% are going right into the target date funds. And that's because the target date funds were the default funds. And what we typically see is whenever you use the target date funds as a default fund, the majority of the assets remain there. You see very little money that moves from those funds. We have 294 participants that are utilizing one fund, and a majority in the target date funds, like we mentioned. A couple participants in the fixed account, and then 2 in the Vanguard Index Fund. And here is a breakdown of the percentage of assets by fund. And I also provided a copy of the performance report as of September 30th for you to look at. And just reviewing the scorecard, there are 4 funds that are on the watch list. Just wanted to bring that to the committee's attention. So the American Fund Series, Vanguard, they both had fund change or management changes. American Funds added 4 additional analysts. So it's nothing to be concerned about, but just again wanted to make sure that you are aware anytime there are changes in the managers. We just put it on our watch list. And then the same thing with Vanguard, they made some changes, and they typically rotate managers within their index funds. And then the other group is the Wells Fargo Fund. They rebranded to Allspring Global Investments, and their current CEO will retire, but he'll remain on as a senior advisor. So you'll see starting December 6th, you'll see that their name will change to the Allspring Global Investments. And then the last fund that's on your watch list is the Voya Small Cap Fund, and it's on that list because it's lagging its peer group and the benchmark. And I can certainly share additional information regarding the funds or even alternative funds. Any questions?
Are the watch list funds highlighted in any way rather than just a verbal description for us, or are you just describing it to us?
I'm just describing it, but you also should have a copy of the scorecard summary, and then those funds are noted that they're on the watch list.
Okay, thank you.
And when you give us that information, can you point out the ones that are just underperforming versus having management changes? Is that possible?
Yeah, it's on there, and I will speak with Catherine if you need additional information. I can certainly send it over.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And now let's just switch gears a little bit. When we look at engagement, participants are engaging with the plan. They're engaging through the call center, with the mobile app, and the participant website. And just as a reminder, we look at each category separately. So when we look at these percentages, that's out of 100%. And a question came up last time as to why these numbers don't add up. It's because each category is viewed as its own. So the participant website is the most utilized tool. And if we look at the bottom, it's just broken down by age group. You can see across the board, each age group is utilizing the participant website. And even the 70+ group is using the mobile app. And we continue to see an increase in both the e-delivery participants signing up to receive electronic communications as well as web registration. So these numbers look really good. And we'll continue to focus on that. When Marta meets with participants, she reviews this information with them as well. Any questions?
Any questions from the board members?
No.
No.
No questions at this time?
Okay, thank you. And here, this slide just shows you how the participants are engaging and then the type of action they're taking. So we had 124 participants that used the website, and 70 participants changed their deferrals. And that was about 56%. And then the mobile app as well, that's being utilized. So here, 85% of the participants that use the mobile app made a change to their deferral, which is great. So we had 69 participants that utilized one of the tools, with the My Orange Money tool being the most utilized. And if we look down below, we'll see the types of changes that they made as a result of using these tools. So about 42% or 29 participants made changes after utilizing the tools. And in addition to the tools and resources, participants continue to engage and work with MARTA year to date. So from January 1st through September 30th, she has engaged with 218 participants, and that's through a combination of calls and virtual in-person appointments. I think the feedback that we've received from participants is they really do enjoy seeing MARTA in person. So we will resume in-person visits in January.
Great.
And the various, yes. And MARTA is looking forward to it as well. The topics that they're discussing are count reviews, beneficiaries, et cetera. MARTA has been proactively contacting participants. She's changed her approach a tad bit in terms of she's organizing it by birth month. So not only is she wishing them a happy birthday, she's also wishing them success as they plan for their financial future. We continue to promote the plan through email blast and newsletters. We will be implementing, or MARTA will be contacting department heads in the next few weeks, really to offer them the opportunity to have her speak to their employees and or schedule one-on-one appointments. So I think that's going to take place in the next couple weeks.
Yes, thank you, Sarla. I asked Sarla to wait before that occurred until we had a director's phone call, so I could let all the directors know. So we'll do that at the last Monday in November, and then MARTA will make some calls following.
That'll be great.
Great, thank you.
All right, so we've also introduced some new resources, communications. This past October, we introduced, we launched our Retire Better resources, and it's really designed to, or geared towards those participants age 50 and above. So when they log into their account, they will automatically see a button that says Retire Better Resources they can click on. And some of the items that will be in that section is a 2-page checklist. There's a downloadable and fillable workbook that is designed to help individuals get organized and really help them stay on track as they approach their retirement. There's a video that provides 10 actionable steps that can be considered as they plan for retirement. And then the other item is the IRS just announced the new limits for 2022. So the general limit is going up by $1,000, so it'll be $20,500. But the age 50 catch-up limit will remain the same at $6,500. So we've prepared a communication, which I've included a picture of here, that will be going out soon as well. So we're working with Catherine and her team to send out an email blast. In addition to announcing the new limits, it also promotes the idea of increasing contributions as well. And that is it for my formal presentation.
Great, thank you very much. Very informative. Any questions or comments from the board?
No, very informative. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. That's great.
Thank you. And then I'll go ahead and sign off, and I wish you all a happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you, same to you. Thanks for joining us. Happy
Thank you.
Thanksgiving.
Bye.
Take care, Sarla. Thank you.
Now, there's other items
You're
that are a part of what's in board docs.
So Go ahead, Catherine. Do you want to speak to that, the other materials that are attached?
Thank you. I would like to draw your attention to those. So if you would still look at the Voya presentation attachment in board docs, you'll see a plan performance from June 30. That was a follow-up item from our August meeting, and then plan performance from September 30. And it speaks to our discussion about fiduciary and our fiduciary role. And last meeting really tried to clarify Voya is a record keeper for the plan and does not provide investment consulting services. And so we don't have an investment policy statement that guides us when a investment is on a watch list. And so I took the liberty of attaching the fiduciary documents again to this agenda. They were in the last agenda item as well, hoping that people had a chance to read them, and then perhaps we could have a discussion if the board had any questions or if there were any items that someone wanted to discuss.
Well, the one on here that says the Voya Fund Evaluation Scorecard, that attachment does show that it's got the items that are flagged on the watch list.
And again, 3 of the 4 items are because of investment managers. 1 is performance-driven,
Right,
and that is the Voya Small Cap.
right.
So I'm sorry, I'm not following exactly. Where do you see, I see a lot that are
The
watch list
scorecard.
flag. I'm on the scorecard. And it has watch list flag, but it has view for, let's see. What column are you? Maybe someone can walk me through this.
No, I think you're reading it the same as
Right.
we are. So on the watch list flag where it says view,
Yeah.
that means they're on the watch list.
On the list.
And so
Right.
this is like a summary page, I would assume, right, Catherine? And then if you were on the website and you could click that link, you could probably go in
Right.
further.
See more
But-
detail.
Right, but for our purposes, this is the summary sheet. Is that a
Right.
good way to say it?
Yes, yes. And all the ones at the top are the American funds,
Right.
because of the manager change.
I see.
Right.
Right.
And then the Vanguard, the Wells Fargo, and the Voya.
Got it.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions or clarifications on 3A, the Voya presentation or the materials attached in board docs?
Well, maybe back to Catherine, I know we talked about the fiduciary responsibility and whether we should have a investment policy statement. How do we go about that? I mean, that's part of this discussion for this agenda item?
So I took the liberty of making a couple of calls, and Voya at one point would send a sample investment policy statement for boards to work through. They've really gotten away from that because the policy statements can be so personalized. I spoke with Marquette, and they offer advisory services for some of the county trusts, and they feel the same, that it really is worthwhile for the board to go through the policy statement with some kind of a consultant, some kind of an advisor.
Okay.
And then I spoke with Mary Claire Cheshire, and Mary Claire offers legal services for some of the county trusts. And she certainly would be able to assist us with that process if that's something that we were interested in. Going the route of a legal assistance, however, would not provide us with investment management services or investment consulting services. So Mary Claire, if she were to assist us, it would be limited to creating the statement. And then we would be in the position of, if we had to or felt that we wanted to change a fund, do we do that ourselves? Do we ask for assistance? Do we get some kind of services? So I further just did a ballpark if we were to request some kind of investment consulting services, what that would look like. And Bolton, you may remember, helped us with this transition to Voya. They quoted approximately $20,000 is what their services would cost. I asked Pat Wing as well, and he did a back of the envelope and said between 15 and 20. That it appears that that would fall in a small procurement.
Right.
Because it's under 30, and the requirements for a small procurement process, multiple quotes should be obtained when practical. But it's not a formal solicitation. Most plans, I also took the liberty of inquiring through MACO HR directors to see what other counties are doing. Most plans are not quite as mature as ours. You may remember we consolidated from 3 funds from advisors that were really, we hadn't looked at in years. We are ahead of many counties because we've already done that work. The funds that do have investment advisory services, the participants pay. So it's a similar model like our trusts. So that $20,000 would be charged to the 341 people in the plan as a percentage of their assets. So the fees now that participants pay that are disclosed in their statements are administrative fees. It would be a fee that would be like that. So that's the most consistent model, and that's sort of an industry practice.
So just to clarify again, so they would help us through the process of coming up with a policy, investment policy. And then we would then, once we have that policy, then we would go through the funds to determine whether we want to advise employees to get out of certain funds. Is that how that works? How does it?
No, so just using our example with our other county trusts. So if we were to hire an investment advisor, the first step would be working with the board to develop an investment policy statement, and then looking at the fund lineup, and is the fund lineup in line with the policy statement. Also looking at the investments that are contained within the lineup, and do they recommend any replacements? And if so, why? And then just use as an example that one of the funds on the watch list, if the advisor recommended that that fund was replaced and the board voted and approved, that fund would be removed from the lineup and replaced with another fund.
So is it a one-time shot? They come in and look at our funds and our performance, and then they leave, or are they on contract for a period of time?
Typically, the services would be every quarter. There would be a report out at the meetings. Now, the fees are much less than what they would be for something like our trusts, because they're not traded. They're not going to come in and say you need to buy these stocks. So the anticipation is this lineup isn't going to change very frequently, but they would be providing that oversight.
So I guess my question is, if it's, let's just say it's $20,000, is that $20,000 per year for that service?
Right. Yes. Yeah, and then again, that was a back of the envelope. That was an informal, if you just given the $18 million in assets in the plan, 15 funds, what would you estimate? So I promised that I wouldn't hold anyone to that. Right. Really, what I wanted to know is what kind of procurement it would be.
Right.
If we were going to go down that route.
Right.
And I guess for me, this is a different type of plan because it's the employee choice.
Right.
And the employee chooses the funds that they would like to invest in. The model, and thank you, Catherine, I think you described it well for what we use in the other trusts. But in that model, the manager really assists us in what funds to choose.
Right.
This is different because the employee, I think, works with MARTA and Voya and whatever their tools are, if there are other assets that they use, or resources is a better word, to choose their funds, then I think that's great. Where I see us overseeing that is kind of today's example from Sarla is a good one. We have these funds that are on watch lists. Usually, if we have a manager, we have an IPS, a investment policy statement that guides our way about what to do with them.
Right.
So, for example, if we have 8 funds, if they stay on the watch list, 1 quarter, 2 quarters, 3 quarters, then they rotate off of our preferred funds. And that's just one example of how it guides that. And so for me, if we develop an IPS statement, I think it has to give that caveat of where the employees are designated in that process, that it's not just, us, we represent them and support the employees, but I wouldn't want to take that away from them. I think there are recommendations that say, this is recommended funds, these are not recommended at this time because they're on the watch list, but do we really say we're limiting their opportunity to purchase those funds? I don't know.
And that's a really good point. I think where our liability and where our risk lie is that we are determining the lineup, so that employee choice is limited to begin with because their menu is what we're providing.
Right.
But with that being said, we have a brokerage option. So if an employee really wanted something that we weren't offering, they have that choice. If we were to go the path and just use the example of there's a fund and it's not recommended and we choose to eliminate it from the lineup, anybody who's currently in it could stay. So we're not, kicking you out of the fund.
Right.
You just wouldn't have the option to invest in that in the future unless you went the self-directed.
Right.
You went the back door.
Right.
So there's a lot of employee choice. I think the fiduciary responsibility is very different than in some of the other trusts.
Right.
But I do think that there is some responsibility.
Right. And by alerting the employees
Right.
that these items and these funds that they might be in are on a watch list, I think that's our fiduciary, letting them know that, hey, you might want to consider or get more information, or maybe not tell them exactly where to move it, but
Right.
to let them know that, hey,
Right.
think about it.
Right.
But just to let them know and inform the employees.
And I think that's
Educate
the benefit of
and
the
the educated.
IPS, is to
Yes.
say at what point
do we?
is that notification occur? Does that alert go out? Do the changes for, no new funds, for no new entries or applicants into that fund?
Right.
Those kinds of criteria would be helpful, I think, to help us as a board to then take those kinds of actions when necessary, when those criteria are met.
Right.
But even stepping back, I think maybe what Jeanette's getting at a little bit is this scorecard that we're given today. I don't remember seeing that before. Maybe it's the first time we've seen it.
I think it's the first time we've
First time
seen
we've
it.
seen it. So we have things that are on the watch list which we didn't know necessarily. People get individual statements and they can see performance, but unless it's benchmarked against something, it's hard to know whether it's underperforming, overperforming, or if there are changes. It's kind of, you get a lot of papers and it's kind of hard to tell. So even this information, and if we tracked it a little bit or let employees know, again, there are, the American funds are on this watch. You just so you know, you have funds that are on a watch list. They're on the watch list for these purposes, performance or management changes or whatever. I don't know that we need an investment policy statement in order to at least provide this information. What I'm hearing is that if this was money we were managing for employees, we would be more likely, it would be more appropriate for us to go have this investment policy statement and maybe have a consultant. We're offering these to people and saying, you choose what you want to be in. So I don't know that we have that responsibility to come up with even a statement. I think if we just make sure employees are fully informed with what's happening with their account and how it stacks up with other accounts, and if there's a watch list, they should know that they may have funds that are on a watch list.
Right.
I'd like to know that, and I may not be able to pick that up on my own. So maybe our responsibility is just to get this information out, and maybe in a way that's even easier to consume for the employees.
Right.
Well, and I'm curious if Voya, for example, has an electronic mechanism to alert the participants. So in other words, when we get if you use the watch list as an example, they would know more so than us who is invested in American funds, for example.
Right.
And so when that American funds gets flagged, and I use that word, as an example, is there an opportunity for Voya to send an email, to send a text message that
Right.
says, just as Chris indicated, you're being notified that you have a fund that is identified, and if you'd like more information, please contact MARTA or check the website, so that it's that, because for me, they're going to be the folks that know more than us, and otherwise it appears that we could send out kind of this blanket unnecessarily. It seems that it should be more individualized because it's an employee choice.
Right.
I don't know. I do know that all of these statements are available. So you as a participant can go in and find a performance report.
Right.
You can find the watch list report. All that is on the website. I can certainly ask them.
Yeah,
see.
because, and the only reason then it lends itself to the IPS, the statement, is because then we develop policy, if you will, on when those notices go out. Is it one time on the watch list? Is it when, is it for manager change, or is it for performance? It guides those decisions in terms of when those responses would need to be made.
Right. And I would think that I'd like to further understand do we have any liability if we know something is on the watch list and we do nothing?
Proactively, because what you're describing is it's there if you're looking for it.
Right.
What we're describing is how to proactively notify folks
Right.
if things change.
But even as a board, at what point do you have to replace a fund?
Right.
Right.
And right now, in our others, if you use the other IPS as examples, we have criteria for
Right.
that. And then the manager helps us navigate
Right.
that.
Right.
And I think the manager's a second issue. It's whether or not we need those guidelines.
Right. Right. So if we were going to develop a policy statement without a manager, I would think the route would be getting legal assistance. If we were going to develop a policy statement with a manager,
Right.
if the board felt that that was the route, then we could do it all as a package.
Right.
Right.
Yes, and I'm still not convinced we need a policy statement versus just providing this information to employees, and maybe Voya can help us identify who are in the watch list funds so we can send out targeted notices, or they can do that on our behalf. Because even if we have a policy statement, like I think Catherine said, if it's on a watch list, but I see that the Voya small cap fund is at 4.2, whatever it is, it's underperforming, right? Well, maybe over the long term it's done well, and maybe I think it's going to do well in the future, so I don't want to get out of it. We're not controlling that, and like you said, you can always get into the pick your own funds. There are some complications with that, but you can do that. I know it's, we said this is available, but I think it's when you start wading through all the information in the website, and the website's easy, but still there's a lot of data, a lot of things. It doesn't pop out at you the way I think if we can help employees, that'd be beneficial.
And I think we need to be careful in letting or telling employees where they should have their funds also,
Right.
Right.
because it's their actual individual accounts.
Right.
Yeah.
And if we were to tell them, hey, you should move your funds over to this one, it's on the watch list, and then maybe perhaps something goes wrong with the other fund where they might have been told, how are we liable at that point if we actually advise them certain ways?
Right, but I do think, and I think this came to light when we had the other managers,
Right.
that there's some implicit understanding on behalf of the employees that these have been vetted
Right.
somehow, that we approve of them somehow, or that we, think that they're okay, and that's why they're in the lineup.
Right,
And so I think that's the piece that we have to balance.
right, exactly.
So,
And anything from Chief Butler or Zane?
Yeah, I wanted to add a couple things. I'm kind of leaning toward what Chris was saying, and what Dr. B was talking about, where Voya could somehow send us notices either by text or email, if a fund is on a watch list, say after 2 quarters or
Right.
3 quarters. And the beauty of it is then that employee could contact Voya and they can actually help you pick another plan or a fund in its place to replace it.
Right.
So I think instead of bringing in a manager, I think between Voya and us, we could probably put something in place for that.
Right. I
Great,
agree.
thank you.
Yeah,
Thank
yeah.
you. I think we're all
Thank you,
headed in that
Zane.
direction. Chief Butler, anything to add?
Not at all. Very good discussion on all of the topics. When we talk about this, I go back to at one point and was approved by those who were retired. Mentioned,
Chief Butler, you're not coming in very clearly. I don't know if you're on speaker, or maybe you want to try again, if you would, please.
oh, okay, I'm sorry. I haven't changed a thing. I'm wondering why that's. Hello?
We heard you initially very well, and then we lost you again. It gets very low.
Interesting. I haven't changed the thing. I'm just wondering why that's happening. I'll maybe try the volume or something, but I haven't changed anything with what's going on.
Oh, that's much better. Thank you.
Okay. So I was saying, all of this discussion is very good, and it brings me to mind some things about when I retired from Charles County, and I had Mass Mutual, and previous officers who were retiring mentioned their auction. And as you were discussing that, I was thinking how that approach can be made through Voya or simply the information that we have. If we wanted to, change different, I don't say stocks, but information that we have, and I simply think, versus, getting what we're suggesting here, is that those employees have that information higher.
Yeah, and so do folks feel comfortable that we'll bring this back up at our next meeting and kind of see where we are? It doesn't sound like a manager we're interested in. It sounds like some guidelines to guide us, and we'll pull some things together for next time to see, because it doesn't sound like a full IPS. It sounds more like a policy statement that has to kind of start us off with 6 or 8. And so I'll certainly take that to task and ask the county attorney's office to draw up with me some ideas to bring back to the committee, if that would be helpful.
No, that sounds great.
And what I'd like to do is take a look at our contract with Voya and see whether, and I think it's one of the reasons Sarla didn't present the performance report today. They have to be very cautious that that's not the role that they play. So, would they send out notifications of watch list, for example? So I'll try to understand what those boundaries are.
Okay.
And so I could describe them to the board a little bit more clearly.
That would be great. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I'll just also make a comment, it's a little bit slightly off topic, but in terms of employee choice about which funds to invest in, Voya has their funds, which we've agreed that they will offer to our employees, and we have the self-directed accounts too through TD Ameritrade. But just as a side note, you can only invest half of your amount of money through that process. You can't do the whole thing, we are limiting employees a little bit. I mean, that does give you some freedom, but it's not as easy, and it's not as open as, just want to make sure people know that.
And it's also more expensive.
Yeah.
Yes.
And it's really geared toward somebody that understands investments.
Right.
So it's not the typical participant.
Right. Agreed.
So, yeah, and in fact, I think we have very low participation in that fund. So,
Good, great, thank you. Good discussion today. And we'll turn it over, Catherine, this is, may be things we've already talked about, but under old business, it's fiduciary documents review. Anything to add?
Just if I could, there were multiple documents that I introduced last meeting, and then again, put them here again today, just for everybody's review. One of them is governmental retirement plans and fiduciary responsibilities, and it's a summary. And I went through, and I think for everybody's benefit, we are really meeting the requirements. So I wanted to make sure the board was aware of that. And just if you would bear with me that, so there's a duty of loyalty, so we must operate the plan solely in the interest of the participants. And I think we all do that. We have a duty to act in accordance with the plan document, which is what we do. We have a duty to provide that information to employees. The summary plan document is on our site. When anybody enrolls, they get a copy of the summary plan document. So we're meeting that requirement. We have a duty to act in a prudent manner, so we need to be cautious of risk and make sure that that's well explained, and a duty to diversify plan assets. Again, so participants have, multiple choices, and again, it's risk adverse, on their behalf. So then there are some other, there are prohibited transactions, which I think we don't participate in. And then we have a disclosure for fees, very transparent with the fees. They're on everybody's statements. And then to provide plan information to participants, such as summary plan descriptions, periodic benefit statements, and disclosures relating to fees. So it's a very broad overview, but I feel very confident. I went through all of those, that we are meeting those.
Good, great, thank you. And let me go back to 3A, the Voya presentation. We needed a vote to approve the plan summary from Voya.
I moved that we approved a Voya plan summary.
Thank you, Zane. We have a motion to approve the Voya plan summary. Is there a second?
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor? Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much. Then that was 4A. I think, Catherine, you were finished with the fiduciary review.
Unless anybody had any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Any final comments or questions about the fiduciary documents that Catherine reviewed? No. Hearing none, we'll move to 4B, the meeting calendar for 2022. Catherine?
Thank you, Dr. Bridget. And last meeting, you all approved the calendar, and this was really a follow-up item, so you had that for your records, as well as it's memorialized in board docs. So we have that for reference.
Thank you very much. And that moves us to committee reports, the administrator's report, and I'm going to turn this over to Tracy.
Thank you, Dr. Bridget. There's no new business to report.
Great, thank you.
And just in the, when people are thinking about if we wanted to develop an investment policy statement, for example, we do have funds in that account. So just something to consider.
Okay, right. Great, thank you. And then we move to adjournment. Is there any, if there are no other items for the board members, then I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved?
Do we have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you all very much and have a nice Thanksgiving.
You too.
You too. Thank you.